President Trump has long had an ironclad grip on his party, but this week showed some real cracks and raising some larger questions for the president as Republicans begin to worry about their own political fortunes, not his. The GOP revolt demanding the release of the Epstein files and effectively backing the president into a corner was the most dramatic example of that. Yet his ability to strike fear into wobbly Republicans is still stronger than ever. His zero tolerance for any dissent set the stage for the stunning and abrupt resignation of his one-time MAGA loyalist, Marjorie Taylor Greene. But how long will most Republicans continue to toe the line, given that Trump is facing some of the worst poll numbers of his time in office? Yet overnight, Trump continued to press a feud with Democrats that have left many in his party uncomfortable, as he renews demands for 6 Democrats to be jailed for urging members of the military to disobey unlawful orders.
This is absolutely wild. The White House is in total meltdown right now. Trump's approval rating just collapsed by 14 points. 14 points. That's not a gradual decline. That's not a slow erosion of support. That's a complete and total implosion happening in real time. And Trump's losing his mind over it. Trump's lashing out on social media. Trump's making bizarre excuses. Trump's claiming that his poll numbers are actually going up among smart people. Smart people. That's what Trump said. He said his poll numbers are down overall, but they're up among smart people. Can you believe this? This is the kind of thing a president says when he's in complete panic mode. This is the kind of thing a president says when reality is crashing down on him and he has no idea how to respond. And it's happening right now, in December 2025, just months into his second term, when Trump was supposed to be at maximum power. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Let's break this all down with my excellent panel this morning. Anna Palmer of Punchbowl News, CNN's David Chalianen, and Sungmin Kim of the Associated Press. Good morning to you all. David Chalianen, I want to start with you to set the stage of where we are in Trump's presidency right now, because we are seeing numbers that are not good for the president, that have been very bad, which we'll get into in a second here. We saw what happened with Marjorie Taylor Greene, her abrupt resignation. We saw what happened with the Epstein files and these fractures within the party. Is this a natural place where a president would be at this point in his presidency, in his second term, or is this a larger and more worrying sign for the White House?
Well, I think both things can be true. I do think it could be, it is a natural point for somebody serving a second term. Remember, you start serving your second term, as soon as you put your hand on the Bible on Inauguration Day, you are technically a lame duck, right? The Constitution says so. Now,
let me walk you through what's actually happening. Trump's approval rating is now at 38%. 38%. That's catastrophically low. That's the kind of number you see when a president is facing complete political collapse. And independents have abandoned Trump completely. Independents favor Democrats by 33 points. 33 points. That's a massive gap. That's the kind of gap that determines election outcomes. That's the kind of gap that means Democrats are going to win independent voters and therefore win elections. So Trump's not just losing overall approval, Trump's losing the swing voters who decide elections. Trump's losing the people who put him in office in the first place, and Trump has no idea how to handle it. The 14-point drop is massive because it shows that Trump's support is collapsing rapidly. It's not like Trump's approval was steady and then ticked down a little bit. Trump's approval is diving. Trump's approval is plummeting. Trump's approval is collapsing in real time. And that suggests that something fundamental is changing in how voters see Trump. That suggests that voters are reassessing their support for Trump. That suggests that voters are losing confidence in Trump very quickly. And once that kind of rapid collapse starts, it's very hard to stop. Once voters start abandoning you, it becomes contagious. More voters follow. More voters decide to jump ship. And before you know it, you've got a stampede of voters running away from you. Now the economic numbers are still the biggest driver of Trump's collapse. Over 75% of voters view the economy negatively. 75%. That's almost everybody. That's an overwhelming majority. That's the kind of number that determines electoral outcomes. When 3/4 of the country thinks the economy is bad, the party in power is going to get destroyed in elections, and voters blame Trump for the economic problems by a 2-to-1 margin. That's the thing that's really devastating. It's not just that voters think the economy is bad, it's that voters blame Trump for it. Voters think Trump made things worse. Voters think Trump is responsible for their economic suffering, and that's driving everything else. That's driving Trump's approval down. That's driving the midterm outlook down. That's driving the whole political situation. The crazy part is how Trump is responding to this collapse. Trump's tweeting. Trump's making excuses. Trump's claiming his numbers are actually great among smart people. This is what desperation looks like. This is what it looks like when a president is completely losing control of the situation and doesn't know what to do about it. Trump's trying to dismiss his own polling numbers. Trump's trying to claim that the polls are wrong or that he's actually doing great with smart people. But the American people aren't buying it. The American people can see that Trump's approval rating is collapsing. The American people can see that Trump's losing support. The American people can see that Trump's in trouble. And Trump claiming that his numbers are actually great among smart people just makes him look desperate and out of touch. The meltdown in the White House is real. People are panicking. Staff members are worried. Republicans in Congress are terrified because they all understand what these numbers mean. These numbers mean that Republicans are going to lose the House in 2026. These numbers mean that Democrats are going to take over Congress. These numbers mean that Trump's second term is going to be a disaster. These numbers mean that investigations and impeachments are coming, and there's nothing anyone can do about it because the fundamental problem, the economic dissatisfaction, is beyond anyone's control. You can't fix inflation overnight. You can't bring down the cost of living with a tweet. You can't convince voters that the economy is good when they're struggling to pay their bills. So the White House is in meltdown because everyone understands that this is bad and it's going to get worse. The timing makes this even worse because this is happening right now. This is happening in December 2025. Trump's been president for less than a year. Trump's supposed to be in his honeymoon period. Trump's supposed to still have momentum from his election victory. But instead, Trump's approval rating is collapsing. Trump's losing support. Trump's becoming more unpopular. And that pattern, once it starts, is very hard to reverse. Once voters start turning against the president, once voters start losing confidence, it becomes very hard to win them back. Trump would have to do something dramatic to reverse this trend. Trump would have to implement policies that actually improve the economy. Trump would have to show tangible results that make people's lives better, and there's no sign that Trump is capable of doing that. What's especially damaging is that Trump's losing support across all the demographics that should be supporting him. Men are turning against Trump, white voters are turning against Trump, non-college educated voters, which were a key Trump demographic, are turning against Trump. These are supposed to be Trump's people. These are the groups that put Trump in office, and they're all abandoning him because of the economy. They're all looking at their economic situation and blaming Trump. They're all wondering why Trump said he could fix the economy and then didn't. And Trump has no answer to that question. Trump has no way to win these voters back. Trump's just left claiming that his numbers are actually great among smart people, and that's pathetic. That's the kind of thing a desperate president says when he knows he's losing. Alright, so let's dig into what's really happening inside the White House right now, because there's a lot of chaos and panic and desperation going on. And once you understand what's happening, you start to see how serious the situation really is. Trump's approval rating didn't just go down a little bit. Trump's approval rating collapsed by 14 points. That's a massive drop. That's not normal. That's not something that happens gradually. That's something that happens when voters suddenly lose confidence in a president. That's something that happens when there's a sudden shift in how people perceive a president. And that sudden shift is what's causing the panic in the White House. The question is, why did it happen so suddenly? Why did Trump's approval rating collapse by 14 points in a short period of time? Well, the answer is that it didn't just happen. It's been building up for a while. Trump's been losing support gradually over the past few months. But then something triggered a sudden acceleration. Something made voters suddenly lose even more confidence. Something made the decline accelerate rapidly. And the most likely trigger is that voters suddenly realized that the economy isn't getting better. Voters suddenly realized that Trump's promises on the economy aren't going to be fulfilled. Voters suddenly realized that they're going to be stuck with high prices and economic struggle for the foreseeable future. And that realization caused a sudden shift in how voters perceive Trump. Now, Trump's trying to respond to this by claiming his numbers are actually great among smart people, and that's one of the most revealing things Trump has said in a long time, because it shows that Trump is refusing to accept reality. It shows that Trump is looking at his collapsed approval rating and trying to find a way to dismiss it. It shows that Trump is willing to suggest that the polls are wrong, or that there's some hidden group of smart people who actually support him. But the reality is that the polls are real. The reality is that Trump's approval has collapsed. The reality is that voters are abandoning him, and claiming that smart people actually support him is just Trump refusing to accept that reality. This kind of response is actually really damaging for Trump because it makes him look delusional. It makes him look like he's out of touch with reality. It makes him look like he's in denial. And when a president looks delusional, when a president looks out of touch, it drives his approval down even more. It convinces more voters that they need to abandon him. It convinces more voters that he's not capable of being president. So Trump's attempt to dismiss his collapsed approval rating is actually making the situation worse, not better. Trump's actually accelerating his own decline by refusing to accept reality. The White House is in meltdown because everyone there understands what this means for the administration going forward. Everyone there understands that if Trump's approval rating stays in the 30s, if Trump continues to lose support, then Trump is going to be a lame duck president. Trump is going to be unable to pass legislation. Trump is going to be unable to implement his agenda. Trump is going to be unable to govern effectively, and everyone in the White House knows that. Everyone in the White House is realizing that Trump's second term might be a complete disaster. And there's a lot of panic about that, because people's jobs depend on Trump being successful. People's careers depend on Trump being popular. And if Trump becomes a lame duck, if Trump becomes completely unpopular, then everyone around him is going to suffer the consequences. Now let's talk about what this means for the Republican Party going into 2026, because that's where the real consequences are going to be felt. Republicans are looking at Trump's collapsed approval rating. Republicans are looking at the fact that independents favor Democrats by 33 points. Republicans are looking at the fact that voters blame Trump for economic problems, and Republicans are panicking. Republicans are realizing that Trump's unpopularity is going to drag down Republican candidates. Republicans are realizing that they're probably going to lose the House. Republicans are realizing that they might even lose Senate seats. And that realization is causing real panic in the Republican Party. You're already starting to see Republicans distance themselves from Trump. You're already starting to see Republicans making their own statements about the economy. You're already starting to see Republicans trying to separate themselves from Trump's messaging. And that separation is only going to accelerate as we get closer to 2026. Because as it becomes clearer that Trump is a liability, as it becomes clearer that Trump's unpopularity is going to hurt Republican candidates, more and more Republicans are going to try to distance themselves from Trump. And that fracturing of the Republican Party is going to make it even harder for Republicans to maintain their majority. The off-year election losses that were mentioned in the summary are also really important because they suggest a trend. They suggest that Republicans are already losing ground in elections. They suggest that the pattern of Republican losses is already established. And Trump's collapsed approval rating suggests that this trend is going to continue and probably accelerate. So if Republicans were already losing ground before Trump's approval collapsed, they're going to lose even more ground once voters realize how unpopular Trump is. The trend is only going to get worse from here. Now let's think about what economic policies could actually help Trump. What could Trump do to improve his approval rating on the economy? Well, Trump could try to bring down inflation further. Trump could try to bring down the cost of living. Trump could try to implement policies that actually help ordinary people. But here's the problem. Trump's main economic policy is tariffs. Trump wants to impose tariffs on imports, and tariffs are likely to raise prices, not lower them. Tariffs are likely to make inflation worse, not better. Tariffs are likely to make the cost of living higher, not lower. So Trump's central economic policy is going in the opposite direction from what voters want. Trump's main agenda on the economy is going to make people's economic situation worse, not better. So Trump is stuck. Trump's approval rating is collapsing because of economic dissatisfaction. But Trump's main solution to economic problems, tariffs, is going to make the economy worse for consumers. So even if Trump tries to address the economic issue, he's going to make things worse. And that means Trump's approval rating is probably going to continue to decline. That means Trump is probably going to become even more unpopular. That means the White House meltdown is probably going to get worse, not better. There's also the question of whether Trump can actually implement an alternative economic strategy. Can Trump pivot away from tariffs toward a more pro-consumer economic approach? Can Trump suddenly become a different kind of president on economic issues? The answer is probably no, because Trump is ideologically committed to tariffs. Trump thinks tariffs are good policy. Trump thinks tariffs will help America. So Trump's not going to abandon tariffs just because they're unpopular. Trump's not going to change his economic strategy just because voters don't like it. Trump's going to double down. Trump's going to insist that his policies are right, even as voters turn against him, and that's going to accelerate Trump's decline. Okay, so let's break down what's happening in the White House right now and what it means for Trump's presidency and the Republican Party. Because there are three major things happening that are going to determine the future of American politics. Number 1, Trump's approval rating has collapsed so dramatically that the White House is in complete meltdown and Trump is losing his grip on reality. When a president's approval rating drops by 14 points in a short period of time, that's a sign of a fundamental crisis in his presidency. That's a sign that voters have suddenly lost confidence. That's a sign that something major has shifted in how voters perceive the president. And Trump's response has been to deny reality. Trump's response has been to claim that his numbers are actually great among smart people. Trump's response has been to lash out on social media and make excuses, and that kind of response is actually accelerating Trump's decline because it makes him look delusional and out of touch. This is really important because it suggests that Trump doesn't have a plan to address the economic crisis. Trump doesn't have a strategy to win back voters who are dissatisfied with the economy. Trump's just going to deny that there's a problem and claim that the polls are wrong, and that's not going to work. Voters are not going to be convinced by Trump's excuses. Voters are not going to believe Trump when he claims his numbers are great among smart people. Voters are going to believe their own lived experience. Voters are going to believe what they see in their own lives. And they see economic struggle, they see high prices, they see a cost of living they can't afford, and they blame Trump for it. Number 2, Republicans are panicking about the 2026 midterms because Trump's collapsed approval rating is going to drag down Republican candidates. When your party's leader has an approval rating in the 30s, when independents are abandoning him, when voters blame him for economic problems, your party is in serious trouble heading into elections. Your candidates are going to have a hard time winning. Your incumbents are going to be vulnerable. You're going to lose seats, and Republicans know that. Republicans are looking at Trump's numbers, and they're realizing that they're probably going to lose the House. They're realizing that they might lose Senate seats. They're realizing that 2026 is going to be a disaster for the Republican Party, and that realization is causing real panic. You're already seeing Republicans distance themselves from Trump. You're already seeing Republicans make their own economic proposals. You're already seeing Republicans try to separate themselves from Trump's messaging, and that separation is only going to accelerate. Because as it becomes clearer that Trump is a liability, as it becomes clearer that Trump's unpopularity is going to hurt them, more Republicans are going to try to distance themselves, and that fracturing of the Republican Party is going to weaken the party going into the midterms. Republicans are going to be divided. Republicans are going to be sending mixed messages. Republicans are going to be fighting with Trump and with each other, and that's going to make it easy for Democrats to beat Republicans in 2026. Number 3. The fundamental problem driving Trump's collapse, economic dissatisfaction, is not something Trump can easily fix. Trump's main economic policy is tariffs, but tariffs are going to make prices go up. Tariffs are going to make inflation worse. Tariffs are going to make the cost of living higher. So Trump's central economic policy is going to make the economic situation worse, not better. And that means Trump's approval rating is probably going to continue to decline. That means Trump is probably going to become even more unpopular. That means the White House meltdown is going to get worse, not better. Now, Trump could try a different economic strategy. Trump could try to pivot toward policies that would actually help consumers. Trump could try to bring down prices and the cost of living. But Trump seems unwilling or unable to do that. Trump seems committed to his tariff strategy. Trump seems willing to double down on policies that are unpopular, and that's going to accelerate his decline. That's going to make his approval rating worse. That's going to increase the panic in the White House and in the Republican Party. Let's think about what happens over the next year and a half leading up to the midterms. Trump's approval rating is probably going to stay low or get even lower. Economic dissatisfaction is probably going to persist because prices are going to stay high. Republican unity is probably going to fracture as more Republicans distance themselves from Trump. Democratic confidence is probably going to grow as they realize that Republican is vulnerable, and the midterms are probably going to be a Democratic wave election, similar to what happened in 2018 when Trump's approval was low and Democrats gained control of the House. If that happens, if Democrats take back the House, everything changes for Trump. Committees controlled by Democrats will investigate Trump, subpoenas will be issued, witnesses will be called, and all the things Trump has been able to avoid while Republicans controlled Congress become possible. Impeachments become possible, criminal referrals become possible, and Trump's second term becomes a nightmare instead of a triumph. But here's what's important right now in this moment. The White House is in meltdown. Trump's approval rating has collapsed. Independents have abandoned Trump. Voters blame Trump for economic problems. Republicans are panicking about the midterms. And Trump's response has been to deny reality and claim his numbers are actually great among smart people. That's not leadership. That's not a strategy. That's desperation. That's a president losing his grip on reality. That's a president who doesn't understand what's happening or how to respond to it. The fact that Trump's approval has fallen this far so quickly is a sign that something fundamental has shifted in American politics. It's a sign that voters have lost confidence in Trump. It's a sign that Trump's coalition is fragmenting. It's a sign that Trump's second term is in serious trouble. And the White House meltdown, the panic among Republicans, the fracturing of the party, all of that is a sign of what's coming next. A wave of Democratic gains in the midterms, a loss of Republican control of Congress, a transition from Trump as a powerful president to Trump as a vulnerable, potentially lame duck president. So there you have it. Trump's approval rating has collapsed by 14 points. The White House is in meltdown. Republicans are panicking. Trump is in denial, claiming his numbers are great among smart people. The economy remains the fundamental problem, and the midterms are coming up fast. This is one of the most significant political collapses happening right now. This is a story that's going to reshape American politics. Keep watching because things are about to get a lot worse for Trump and a lot better for Democrats. This is just the beginning of what could be a historic collapse of presidential power.